Introduction. The Life of the Buddha. Today is Saturday, the 3rd of January, 1998. This is the first day of the first time we have ever offered a class on Buddhist philosophy at Chaya Meditation Monastery. I'm glad to see that all of you are interested in Buddhist philosophy and meditation. Before we start our class, we need to know about the great teacher, about the Buddha. Many people who don't understand Buddhism think that the Buddha was a god. But he was not a god. Our Buddha was born in 623 BC at Lumbini in India, which nowadays belongs to Nepal. His parents were King Suddhodana and Queen Mahamaya. His first name was Siddhartha. He was a prince. When he was 16 years old, he married his first cousin, Yasodhara. When Prince Siddhartha was 29 years old, he visited the royal park and saw the four great signs, namely, an old man, a sick man, a corpse, and a monk. Seeing the four great signs made the prince realize the unsatisfactoriness of life. He began to deeply ponder renunciation. On the very day Prince Siddhartha saw the four great signs, his son Rahula was born. But that evening, about midnight, he renounced the world. Siddhartha spent 6 years practicing austere methods of meditation as he endeavored to discover the truth. Finally, when he was 35 years old, about 588 BC, he attained supreme enlightenment. He destroyed all defilements and became a fully enlightened one, or a Buddha. The Buddha spent the next 45 years teaching the truth. Then, in 543 BC at the age of 80, he entered Mahaparinibbana. That is, he passed away and attained final emancipation. If you ever want to know how many years have passed since the Buddha passed away, you can just add 543 to whatever the current year is. This year is 1998. When we add 543 to that, we see that the Buddha passed away 2,541 years ago. The emergence of Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. About 100 years after the Buddha passed away, Buddhism basically divided into two distinct schools, Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. Sometimes you may hear people refer to Theravada as Hinayana. They mean the same thing. You might also hear Theravada Buddhism referred to as the southern school of Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism as the northern school. So, what is meant by southern school or northern school? The Buddha was born in India, right? So we can consider India to be in the center. As Buddhism began to spread out from the Buddha's homeland, it moved south to places like Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. This became known as Southern Buddhism. It is Theravada Buddhism. Buddhism also spread north to Bhutan, Tibet, Nepal, Mongolia, Japan, and Russia. Buddhism in these countries came to be called Northern Buddhism. This is Mahayana Buddhism. Nowadays, some countries, like Vietnam, Taiwan, and even Nepal, have both Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism. But Bhutan, Mongolia, Japan, and Tibet are just Mahayana Buddhism. So, the school of Buddhism, southern or northern, was originally based upon its geographic relation to India. Why do they call it Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism? According to the teachings of Theravada Buddhism, everyone can attain Nibbana either by becoming a Buddha or by becoming an Arahant. Like us, we practice meditation every day. Why? To become an Arahant. It's not necessary to gain enlightenment as a Buddha. But Mahayana Buddhism believes that everyone should become a Buddha. That's why Mahayana is called the large vehicle. Maha means large and yana means vehicle. Mahayana Buddhists would like to attain Nibbana, emancipation, as a Buddha. For Theravada, we can attain emancipation as either a Buddha or an Arahant. What about all of you? Do you want to become a Buddha or an Arahant? Either one, right? Arahant is enough. I mentioned a few moments ago that Theravada Buddhism is sometimes called Hinayana. Hina means lower, so Hinayana means lower vehicle. Theravada is conservative and orthodox. It follows the original teachings of the Buddha. It is the original Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, on the other hand, is liberal-minded. They tend to add more elements to Buddhism. That's why they have many suttas in Mahayana, many more than we have in Theravada Buddhism. Buddhism split into these two schools after the Second Buddhist Council, some 100 years after the Buddha passed away. The Buddhist Councils. Now, I would like to explain how the Buddha's teachings were recorded and handed down over the centuries. Throughout the history of Buddhism, we have had 6 Buddhist councils. The first Buddhist council was held in Rajagaha, India about 3 months after the death of the Buddha. It lasted for 7 months. During that time, an assembly of 500 elder Arahants gathered. There, 2 monks, Upali and Ananda Thera, recited the teachings of the Buddha from memory. After they were recited, the Assembly of Arahants approved the teachings as authentic. They didn't have books back then, as they do now, so everything depended on memorization. They had to learn the Buddha's teachings by heart. It wasn't as easy as it is today. So this was the first Buddhist council. The second Buddhist council was held in Vesali, India about 100 years after the Buddha passed away. During the 8 months that the council convened, 700 arahants recited and approved the teachings. The purpose of the second Buddhist council was to preserve the purity of the teachings. Some Buddhists had begun to feel that certain rules of discipline that had been handed down by the Buddha were no longer valid, so there was growing concern that the religion was losing its original purity. The hope was to arrest the growth of irreligion. The Third Buddhist Council, which lasted for 9 months, was held in India about 234 years after the death of the Buddha. At that time, 1,000 monks assembled and recited all of the Buddha's scriptures. The purpose of the Third Buddhist Council was to compile the original teachings of the Buddha. This occurred during the reign of King Ashoka. After the Third Buddhist Council concluded, King Ashoka sent missionaries to 9 different countries to spread the Buddha's teachings. According to the stories, he sent 2 elder monks, Sona and Uttara, to Suvarnabhumi in Lower Burma. Even today, we can see the remains of this ancient city in Burma. From there, the missionaries pressed on to Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Laos, and Cambodia. King Ashoka also sent his son Mahinda and his daughter Sangamita to do missionary work in Sri Lanka. If we go to India today, we can see stone pillars that had been erected and inscribed by the elders of King Ashoka to record these noble events. There are many of these stone pillars in India. About 450 years after the Buddha passed away, the Fourth Buddhist Council was held in Sri Lanka. It was attended by 500 learned monks. Here, they wrote down all of the Buddha's teachings on palm leaves. This was the first time the teachings had been written down. The purpose of the Fourth Buddhist Council was to solidify religious practice and culture in the face of growing materialism and the moral decline of mankind through war and famine. The Fifth Buddhist Council was held in Burma about 1871 AD, some 2414 years after the Buddha passed away. During this council, they inscribed all of the Buddhist scriptures on 729 marble slabs. If we go to Mandalay, which was then the capital, but is now the second largest city in Burma, today, we can see what is known as the largest Buddhist library in the world. Those big stone slabs are there. They built a big pagoda called Kuthoda Pagoda and you can read the scriptures on both sides of the slabs. The Sixth Buddhist Council was held in Burma about 1954 AD. At that time, 2,473 Burmese monks and 144 monks from Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Japan, India, Nepal, the whole world, basically, convened. Altogether there were 2,617 learned monks at that council, which lasted for 2 years. The purpose of the Sixth Buddhist Council was to examine the canonical texts and compare them to those of other Buddhist countries in an attempt to reconcile any apparent contradictions in the teachings. The teachings. We generally categorize the teachings in a couple of different ways, by Nikaya and by Pitaka. If we look at them in terms of Nikaya, we see that there are 5 Nikayas. Nikaya means collection, so, we have a collection of long discourses which we call Digha Nikaya, a collection of medium-length discourses we call Majjhima Nikaya, a collection of connected discourses we call Samyutta Nikaya, a collection of numerical discourses we call Anguttara Nikaya, and a collection of minor discourses, which we call Khuddaka Nikaya. These are the 5 Nikayas, which include all the discourses of the Sutta Pitaka. In other words, all of the discourses within the Sutta Pitaka are found within these 5 Nikayas. We can also look at the teachings in terms of the 3 Pitaka. Pitaka means basket, which here means things to be learned. So we have the Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutta, or Suttanta, Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. The Vinaya is the teachings on discipline. In Pali, there are 8 books about Vinaya. As for the Suttanta Pitaka, the discourses, there are 25 books. And Abhidhamma Pitaka, the highest doctrine, has 12 books. Altogether, there are 45 books of Buddhist scripture in Pali. When we translate the teachings into English, Burmese or Thai, it's more than that. Abhidhamma. What we're going to study is Abhidhamma. I will be teaching this to you. It's not Vinaya or Suttanta, it's Abhidhamma. Before we study it, we should understand what Abhidhamma means. When you read a book about Buddhism, you see the word Dhamma a lot. If it's spelled with a capital D, it refers to the Buddha's teachings. If it's spelled with a lowercase d, it refers to nature or means to hold or support. All nature is Dhamma, and Dhamma means the Buddha's teachings. And the word Abhi means excelling, distinguished, or higher. Abhidhamma is the highest doctrine. It is the teaching excelling or distinguished from the teachings in Suttanta Pitaka with regards to the method of treatment. So, Abhidhamma is higher and much deeper than the teachings found in Suttanta Pitaka. It's the highest doctrine, so it's Abhidhamma. In the suttas, they talk about the 5 aggregates: corporeality, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. They are treated briefly in the suttas. But in Abhidhamma, the topic is treated in minute detail with much in the way of explanation. It explains in detail the meaning of corporeality, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Abhidhamma explains this all in detail. That's why we call it Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma teaches things in the context of what is ultimate, in contrast to the conventional teachings found in Suttanta Pitaka. Suttanta Pitaka may talk about man, animal, or being. But in Abhidhamma, the teachings are conveyed in terms of ultimate truth, as it focuses on that which is real. There is no man, no animal, and no being. Reality is expounded in Abhidhamma in many different ways, primarily in terms of mind and matter. Here, mind is explained and analyzed. What is mind? It's divided into citta, which we might call consciousness in English, and cetasika, mental factors. Together, they are mind, consciousness, and mental factors are mind. And matter is also treated in full enumeration, broken down into 28 kinds of material property. We'll be talking about all of this in full. Abhidhamma explains their causes, their various groups, how they arise, and how they disappear. We'll learn this step by step. Abhidhamma explains mind and matter in detail. It enables one to realize their ultimate goal, nibbana. It explains all realities and deals with the workings of the mind. Some people have characterized Abhidhamma as a psycho-ethical philosophy of Buddhism. Many books have been written about Buddhism, but it's not easy to find books about Abhidhamma written in English. I'm sorry that we don't have a book for you here, but in our country we have many books about Abhidhamma. Maybe later we will try to find or order some books for all of you. The importance of Abhidhamma is that it is essential for correct and true understanding of the Buddha's teachings given in the suttas. Mostly, books you read about Buddhism talk about the suttas, so you may not understand all of it. But after you study Abhidhamma, you will understand it very clearly. When you listen to a tape or read a book, you will understand what they are talking about in detail. You'll understand right away. As I said, Abhidhamma is essential for a correct and true understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Otherwise, you won't understand what the teachings really say. When we study Abhidhamma, it's extremely helpful for understanding religion, and especially meditation. Some people have said that Abhidhamma was not a teaching that the Buddha intended for the human world. That is, he taught it only to the gods in heaven. But this is not correct. According to the stories, 7 years after the Buddha gained enlightenment, he went to heaven and taught Abhidhamma for 3 months to the gods of Tavatimsa heaven. He did this during the 7th rainy season after his enlightenment. In gratitude of his former mother, who had been reborn in heaven as a man who is now called Setaketu, he taught for the entire 3 months of that rainy season. In heaven, though, it wasn't 3 months, it was only about 3 minutes and 36 seconds. 100 years of human life is just 1 day for beings in Tavatimsa heaven. So for human beings, he would have taught for 3 months, but in heaven it was less than 4 minutes. The Buddha, of course, was a human being. When it was time to go for alms and have lunch, he came back to the human world, where the Buddha's great disciple, Venerable Sariputta, ensured that he would have food. While the Buddha was there, he told Venerable Sariputta about teaching his mother and all the devas in heaven. He also briefly told Venerable Sariputta what he'd taught them. Venerable Sariputta was a very intelligent monk and understood it all in detail. Venerable Sariputta, in turn, taught Abhidhamma to his 500 disciples. So there are 3 versions of Abhidhamma teachings. 1. The Buddha taught Abhidhamma in heaven in great detail. 2. The Buddha taught Abhidhamma to Venerable Sariputta very briefly. And 3. Venerable Sariputta taught Abhidhamma to his disciples in a way that was neither too great nor too small. What we'll be studying now is the 3rd version. The brief version consisted of 4,981 printed pages in the edition compiled during the 6th Buddhist Council. But what I'm going to teach you is not even 4,981 pages. It'll be very, very small by comparison. Aniruddha Thera, a learned monk who lived in southern India sometime between the 8th and 12th centuries, wrote a book called Abhidhammatha Sangaha, a compendium of philosophy. This book is an indispensable guide to Abhidhamma. It is still a textbook for beginners in Burma and other countries, but especially in Burma. Abhidhamma has been a popular subject of study with Burmese monks since the arrival of Theravada Buddhism in Upper Burma in 1057 AD. There are many books about Abhidhamma in Burmese literature. When we learn Abhidhamma in our country, we learn at night. We call it night lessons. We turn off the lights and our teacher teaches it to us. We try to memorize all the types of consciousness. There are 121 types of consciousness, including what they are, what their nature is, and what their characteristics are. We also memorize the 52 kinds of mental factors and the 28 kinds of material properties. We talk about all of this at night, so we call it night lessons. Since the beginning, Abhidhamma has been a compulsory subject for every monk, novice and nun in Burma. I had to memorize it every day for 11 years. I learned by heart, but not just me, every monk, novice and nun in Burma too. We all had to memorize all the Abhidhamma, all the Buddhist scripture, every subject. In summertime, all the learned monks teach the people, the students and teachers at high schools and universities. They do this for 2 or 3 months every year. They learn about Buddhism, Buddhist culture, and Abhidhamma every year. That's why all Burmese students and all Burmese teachers understand Abhidhamma. 2 kinds of truth. In Abhidhamma, we will see 2 kinds of truths. According to Buddhism, truth refers to reality, and something can be true in either a conventional or an ultimate sense. Even if we say something is true, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good or lofty. So, true can refer to conventional truth or ultimate truth. We should remember this. As a matter of conventional truth, we call this or that a man or a woman, etc. But ultimate truth speaks in terms of aggregates, bases, elements, etc. Is it true, by convention, or ultimately? Conventional truth is called Sammuti Sakka. It conforms to convention or usage in the world, like this man, this car, this house, or this temple. This is conventional truth, but before we moved here 2 years ago, what was this place called? A house, right? This is conventional truth. We also call it Panyati, a concept. Panyati and Sammuti Sakka are the same. Now, there are 2 kinds of Panyati, Nama Panyati and Atha Panyati. Before we learn Abhidhamma, Buddhist philosophy, we have to understand the 2 kinds of Panyati. Panyati refers to concepts. Nama Panyati is a name concept. It is that which makes things known, or the name given to an object. You might call this or that a table, a sofa, a pillow, or a book. It's just a name, Nama Panyati, a name concept. Atha Panyati, on the other hand, is a thing concept. It makes known the object conveyed by the name or concept. When you see a man, or a woman, or a dog, you know what it or they are. So, there are 2 kinds of Panyati. And Panyati are timeless. Panyati does not belong to any time. We'll learn about this later. And as for ultimate truth, in Pali we call it Paramattha Sakka. Parama means immutable, or abstract. The ultimate truth is that which conforms to reality. I'd like you to understand what this means. The 4 great essential elements, namely, the element of extension, the element of motion, the element of heat, and the element of cohesion, are immutable. They have their characteristics and they're not chained to something else. For example, with the earth element, which we also call the element of extension, what are the characteristics? Hardness, softness, it's not chained to something else. And with the element of motion, which we also call the air element, there's movement or steadiness. It's also not chained. We're talking here about the great essential elements, which is a type of matter, a Paramattha Sakka. There's also our mind, where we may have attachment or craving. Craving is one kind of reality. If craving arises in your mind, i.e., we want something, some sensual object, or if evil arises in your mind, i.e., we want to do, say or think something bad, the characteristics and natures of these 2 states of mind are the same, they don't change, for all people. They are immutable. They are Paramattha Sakka, ultimate truth. The great essential elements. Let's talk a bit more about the 4 great essential elements. The characteristics and natures of these elements, the element of extension, the element of cohesion, the element of heat, and the element of motion, don't change. That's why we call them Paramattha Sakka. The element of extension has hardness and softness as its characteristics. The element of cohesion has both fluidity and contraction as its properties. The element of heat has both hot and cold, and the element of motion has motion and steadiness. When we sit in meditation, we see these 4 elements, right? Sometimes we touch something and it feels soft or hard. These are the characteristics of the element of extension. If we come into contact with our hand, it's not really a hand. Hand is panyati, a concept. When you touch your hand, you should see hardness or softness, just the element of extension, or the earth element. We should see this reality. If you feel that it's your hand, it's not vipassana, rather, it is panyati. It's not really a hand. But if you realize, I feel softness, then you see the element of extension. Hardness and softness are the characteristics of this element. The element of cohesion has both fluidity and contraction as its characteristics. Inside your body, the four elements come together because of the power of the element of cohesion. The characteristics of the element of heat are hot and cold. So even though we call it the element of heat, it also includes cold. If something feels very hot while we're sitting in meditation, we should just see the reality, this element. It's the same if something feels cold. Heat and cold isn't man or woman or me or mine, or my head, my back, or my mind. It's just an element, it is reality. When we sit in meditation, we should understand this very well. That's why we need to study Abhidhamma. What about the element of motion? Sometimes your body sways to the right or left or forward or downward. It's just motion, movement. We call this the air element, or the element of motion. But sometimes your body is steady, like a stone, it doesn't move. You can feel this too. These are the characteristics of the air element, or the element of motion, just moving and steadiness. These characteristics don't change, it's the nature of this element. That's why we call it Paramattha Sakka. There are four kinds of ultimate truth. We've been talking briefly about one of them, the great essential elements, which are matter, rupa. We should memorize these. Satta and Cetasika. The second kind of ultimate truth we'll be talking about is Satta, which means consciousness. Consciousness is pure awareness of an object, an awareness like clear water. There's no me, or mine, or you. When we sit in meditation, instead, just pure awareness of an object. This is Satta or consciousness like clear water. But sometimes your Satta, your mind, has attachment or evil associated with it. Your mind is not pure at the time, and you get angry or want something. This is because of the mental factors that have come to associate with the mind. We'll discuss this more later, but for now, Satta is just pure awareness of the object. Satta is never without an object. This is the nature of Satta, or consciousness. But what does Satta mean? What is its nature? What are its characteristics? I'll explain that now. As I just said, Satta is never without an object. Every moment, it has an object. Right now as you listen to me, there's just the sound, an object. And your mind is aware of this object. Even when we fall asleep, our mind dreams and takes an object, perhaps something we've experienced before in this life or in a previous life. We dream when we fall asleep, though we may not always remember. So it's the nature of mind, or Satta, that it is never without an object. It has one object all of the time. When we sit in meditation, we try to observe our mind. We try to fix it on our nostrils or our breathing in and breathing out. Maybe on the rising and falling of our abdomen, or perhaps on some sensation in our body. These are the objects of our meditation. As we practice, our mind should be on one object, but sometimes it doesn't want that object. It tries to grab many objects. That's why your mind is distracted, right? Satta is never without an object. Satta is always with us. After we die, rebirth consciousness arises again. So, Satta is always with us. Even someone in a coma has bhavanga Satta. Some synonyms for Satta include Vijnana, Manasa and Hidaya. These are all synonyms for Satta. So if you read a book and see the words Satta, Vijnana, or even heart, then you can know they are synonymous. We might say, he has a good heart, right? A good heart is a good mind. These are synonyms. Abhidhamma recognizes 89 and 121, which I'll explain later, types of Satta. If you can memorize all these terms, it will help you understand. It's not so hard. The third kind of ultimate truth is Cetasika. These are mental factors, though some people translate it as mental states or mental concomitants. Try to memorize these terms. In Pali, though, we call it Cetasika. Cetasika are associated with Satta all the time. They depend on Satta for their arising. They can't arise by themselves. And they arise together with Satta. And please try to remember the four of characteristics of Cetasika. 1. They arise together with Satta. 2. They perish together with Satta. 3. They have the same object with Satta. When our Satta, our mind, has an object, like now, all of you listen to me, to this sound object. Cetasika also observes the same object, all the time, and 4. They share a common base with Sata. We have bases, eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, body base, and mind. If eye consciousness arises, it's based upon the eye base. At that time, some mental factors also arise, also based upon the eye base. All Cetasika have these 4 characteristics. There are 52 Cetasika recognized in Abhidhamma. You're already familiar with some of them, like wisdom, attachment, delusion, and doubt. These are mental factors. Even though there are 52 of these, you probably already know half of them. Loving kindness is another one, as are craving and anger. Rupa. Let's explore Rupa, or matter, a bit more. We'll talk about this kind of ultimate truth in much more detail later, though. Rupa changes when it comes into contact with adverse conditions, such as cold, heat, an animal biting you, by an accident, and so on. Matter will change when it contacts things in this way. That's why we call it matter. By change, I'm referring to obvious or discernible change. For example, maybe you go outside when it's 115 degrees Fahrenheit and then go back inside. Why has your face changed color? It's the same if you go outside when it's very cold, the color will change. When hungry, too, the color of your face may change. If an animal bites you, or you have an accident and injure your body, the body may swell or change color. It might turn red, white, blue, or even black. This is obvious change. Also, Rupa exists in living beings as well as outside things. Your body is matter, outside things. Everything all over the world, such as people, a microphone, a pen, glasses, temples, cars, and so on, are all matter, or Rupa. Additionally, matter has no ability to cognize. Rupa can't know anything. Who knows? Your mind, your body can't know. When there is contact with adverse conditions, it changes, but it has no ability to cognize any object. And Rupa can exist without Sata, as long as it's not living. Mindless beings are a special case, which we'll discuss later. This is Rupa. It changes in a discernible way. The mind also changes all the time, but it's not so obvious. That's why the Buddha said, Sab Sankara Anicca, which means that all conditioned things, in other words, mind and matter, are impermanent. See? Nothing lasts long. There are 28 kinds of matter, or material properties, recognized in Abhidhamma. The 4 great essential elements, which we talked about a few minutes ago, are one of them. We will be learning about and memorizing all 28 types of matter. After you understand consciousness, mental factors, and the 28 kinds of matter, it's very easy to understand these teachings. If you can't understand the 89 types of consciousness, the 52 mental factors, or the 28 material properties, it will be very hard for you. But if you can memorize them, don't worry, you'll understand everything I'll be talking about. Nibbana. The 4th kind of ultimate truth is Nibbana. It is the goal of Buddhism. We try to do meritorious things by way of our physical actions, our verbal actions, and our mental actions. Why? For Nibbana. What does Nibbana mean here? Nibbana is the extinction of desire, ill will, and delusion. If you still have desire, that is, you want some sensual object, it's not Nibbana. Nibbana means no desire, no ill will, anger or aversion, and no delusion or ignorance. Nibbana is like having health and peace. When you become sick, you feel suffering, you hurt. After you recover and have good health, you feel your suffering is gone. It's the same with Nibbana. So when we gain enlightenment, or Nibbana, there is no desire, no ill will, and no delusion. Our mind is supremely peaceful, supremely blissful. And there is liberation, or freedom, from suffering, especially mental suffering. There are many kinds of suffering, which we'll talk about later. For now, just know that Nibbana is liberation, or freedom, from suffering, no more rebirth, no decay, no disease, no death, no sorrow, no lamentation, and no agony, mental or physically. There is no suffering at all. Nibbana is unconditioned. Our mind and matter have a cause. It is because of our karma, good or evil. There is also the influence on the body of temperature and nutriment. But Nibbana, as I said, is unconditioned. It cannot be adequately described using everyday terms, it's incomparable. We can't say, it's like this, or, it's like that. When we practice meditation, we can maybe get a rough sense of it. If we sit for 1 hour without our mind wandering, that is, it's one-pointed and stays on one object, and there's no desire, no ill will, and no delusion at that time, then our mind is tranquil and we feel peace inside. We can try to explain that peace we're feeling, and perhaps another meditator can understand what we're saying. But this still isn't Nibbana. You can't explain it to someone else. The Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. 1. The Noble Truth of Suffering. 2. The Noble Truth of the Origin of Suffering. 3. The Noble Truth of the Cessation of Suffering, and 4. The Noble Truth of the Way leading to the cessation of suffering. But here, we've been talking about ultimate truth, which are also fourfold. Citta, consciousness; Cetasika, mental factors; Rupa, matter; and Nibbana. These are the four ultimate truths. Now, let's take a look at the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is the noble truth of suffering, which includes mundane citta, cetasika, and rupa. Supramundane citta is outside the noble truth of suffering. The second noble truth is the noble truth of the cause of suffering, which is craving. Craving is one kind of mental factor. It is the origin of suffering. The third noble truth is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, or Nibbana. When we gain Nibbana, or enlightenment, we will realize the cessation of suffering. There will be no suffering anymore. We try to do meritorious things, wish for liberation, and practice meditation because we want to reach the cessation of suffering. The fourth noble truth is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is the Noble Eightfold Path, which consists of 8 mental factors. It's very important. The Noble Eightfold Path includes 1. Right understanding; 2. Right thinking; 3. Right speech; 4. Right action; 5. Right livelihood; 6. Right effort; 7. Right mindfulness; and 8. Right concentration. The Buddha spent 45 years teaching us how to develop the Noble Eightfold Path. We will discuss it in detail later, but for now, just briefly. To be able to gain enlightenment, or Nibbana, our ultimate goal, what do we need? We need to fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path. The factors of right speech, right action, and right livelihood consist of moral conduct, or sila. The factors of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration consist of samadhi, i.e., tranquility or concentration. And the factors of right understanding and right thought consist of wisdom, or panya. We need to develop these 3 components of the Noble Eightfold Path, morality, tranquility, and wisdom, every day. And not just in our spiritual life. We need these 3 things developed in our worldly life as well. Without good conduct or morality, we can't gain concentration. Without strong concentration, wisdom cannot arise. So wisdom depends on concentration or tranquility, and concentration is based on moral conduct. We try to develop these 3 components of the Noble Eightfold Path taught by the Buddha because it is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. We need to understand and practice these 3 things. It's very important, even in worldly life. By moral conduct is meant the precepts: 1. Not killing; 2. Not stealing; 3. Not committing sexual misconduct; 4. Not lying; and 5. Not drinking alcohol or using drugs. These 5 precepts are very important. When we have good conduct and firmly observe these 5 precepts, when we sit in meditation we can concentrate our mind easily. This is because our mind is pure. When we think about our precepts, our moral conduct, and know that we haven't harmed anyone, we're a good person, and we respect ourselves, we'll easily gain good concentration when we sit in meditation. And when we get good concentration, we can fix our mind on the present moment for a long time, for many, many hours, and we can see realities. We can see the phenomena of our mind and body arising and passing away. We know this very clearly. We see that everything just arises and passes away, arises and passes away. Who knows this? Wisdom. When we know that nothing lasts long, everything just comes and goes away, we won't be attached to things. And if there's no attachment, no craving, how can suffering arise? There will be no suffering. This is because the cause of suffering is craving, attachment. So if there's no attachment, then there's no suffering. At that moment of experiencing no suffering because there is no attachment, this is Nibbana, or the cessation of suffering. It's called Khanakanirodha, or momentary Nibbana. It's not permanent. The Buddha spent 45 years trying to explain these noble truths to people so that they could better understand the suffering in their lives. People usually think someone or something is causing their suffering, but the cause is actually the person's craving, attachment, desire. And because of this craving, attachment, desire, there is suffering. So we need to have right understanding and right thought to eradicate attachment or desire, ill will, and delusion. Then, your mind becomes pure. Every Buddha, Not just one Buddha, every Buddha taught this, because it's the heart of Buddhism. The Noble Eightfold Path is about doing no evil, cultivating good things, and purifying our own mind. To not do any evil is concerned with morality, right? Trying to cultivate good things consists of concentration. And purifying our own mind consists of practicing meditation until we realize the nature of reality. This is wisdom. So, briefly, the heart of Buddhism is morality, tranquility, and wisdom. This is the Noble Eightfold Path.